Aisha had always been a quiet girl. She never liked the spotlight and rarely spoke unless she had something important to say. Her world was small but full of music. From the moment she could reach the keys of the old piano in her living room, she felt a connection she could not explain. Music was her escape, her companion, and sometimes her only friend. While other children played outside or chatted with friends, Aisha spent hours practicing, moving her fingers across the keys with care and attention. Each note she played felt like a story she was telling to herself. Her teachers at the academy where she studied piano thought she was talented but unremarkable. They saw her modesty and assumed she lacked the boldness to truly shine. They did not notice the way her fingers danced effortlessly over the keys, or how she could bring emotion to the music without exaggeration. They often praised louder, more expressive students while Aisha quietly perfected her skills in the background. Despite this, Aisha never felt the need to prove herself. She loved the piano for what it was, not for recognition. She practiced pieces that challenged her, not for grades, but because she wanted to push herself. Sometimes she would stumble, frustrated, but she never gave up. She learned from every mistake and found joy in small improvements. The piano was a teacher unlike any other, patient, demanding, and honest. At home, her life was simple. Her family was supportive but practical, not particularly musical. They appreciated her talent but did not fully understand the depth of her skill. They knew she could play well enough to entertain guests or win a few local competitions, but they did not see the fire within her. Aisha did not mind. She played for herself and that was enough. One day, during a regular class at the music academy, the teachers announced a new challenge. They had chosen a particularly difficult piece, known for its complexity and the skill required to play it correctly. They told the students that it was a test of talent and dedication. Most of the students looked excited, eager to show off their abilities. Aisha felt a familiar nervous flutter. She knew the piece would be difficult, but she did not back away. She quietly accepted the challenge, her mind already planning how she would approach it. The other students noticed her quiet acceptance and laughed softly. They assumed she would fail just as her teachers expected. They did not know her history of late-night practice sessions, her countless hours spent perfecting scales and arpeggios, or the depth of her understanding of music. They saw only the modest girl who never spoke much, who did not seek attention, and who often blended into the background. Aisha did not let their doubts affect her. She focused on the music itself, imagining the sounds, the emotions behind each note, and the story the composer wanted to tell. She closed her eyes sometimes and let the melody guide her fingers in her mind. By the time the day to play the piece arrived, she felt ready, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she had prepared herself with love and dedication. When she entered the practice room, the other students were already there, chatting and joking. The teachers looked impatient, tapping their fingers on the piano bench as if they had better things to do than wait for Aisha. She felt a moment of nervousness but quickly pushed it aside. She had done this countless times alone. Now she would do it with an audience. Sitting down at the piano, she took a deep breath. Her hands hovered above the keys, feeling the familiar texture of the worn wood. She remembered the countless hours she had spent practicing in silence, the nights when she had played until her fingers ached, and the moments when a single perfect note had filled her with pride. She let all of that confidence flow into her fingers. The first note she played was soft, almost tentative. The teachers raised their eyebrows, curious but unconvinced. The other students whispered among themselves, expecting her to falter. But then came the next note, followed by another, each one more confident than the last. Her fingers moved with precision, yet there was a natural grace to her playing. The difficult passages, which her teachers had assumed would trip her up, seemed almost easy in her hands. As she continued, a strange silence filled the room. The usual chatter and laughter of the other students faded away, replaced by the sound of the piano and the quiet intensity of her performance. Even the teachers leaned forward slightly, unable to hide their growing surprise. They had underestimated her, and now they were seeing something they had never expected. Aisha's modesty had hidden a fire that only music could reveal. She did not rush, nor did she try to show off. Each note was deliberate, each chord filled with emotion. She played not for applause or recognition, but because she loved it. Her connection with the piano was visible to anyone who cared to watch. Her body swayed gently with the rhythm, and her eyes occasionally closed as if she were in a world of her own creation. The complexity of the piece did not intimidate her. It inspired her. By the time she reached the end, the room was completely silent. Even the teachers, who were usually quick to critique and correct, were speechless. They had expected a modest, careful attempt, and instead they had witnessed a performance full of skill, emotion, and mastery. The other students looked on in awe, realizing that the quiet girl they had dismissed was far more talented than any of them had imagined. Aisha opened her eyes and smiled softly, a little embarrassed by the attention but not overwhelmed. She had done what she wanted to do. She had played her heart and soul through the piano. She did not need the approval of her teachers or the amazement of her peers. Still, she felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her dedication and love for music had shone through. After the performance, the teachers struggled to find words. One of them finally spoke, acknowledging that they had underestimated her abilities. Aisha simply nodded, her modesty intact. She knew that recognition was fleeting, but the connection she had with the piano was permanent. The room that had doubted her now had a glimpse of her true talent, but she remained the same humble, dedicated girl she had always been. In the days that followed, whispers about her performance spread through the academy. Some students were inspired, others intimidated, but Aisha continued her routine with the same quiet dedication. She practiced, she learned, and she allowed her music to speak for her. She did not seek fame or reward. She sought growth, understanding, and the joy of creating something beautiful. Her story, though just beginning, was a reminder that true talent often hides behind humility. It is not always loud or flashy, but when revealed, it leaves a lasting impression. Aisha's quiet determination and love for her craft had set her apart in a world that often values boldness over skill. And though she remained modest, her music would soon carry her further than anyone could have imagined, opening doors to opportunities and recognition that had once seemed impossible. Even in the silence of her practice room, alone with the piano, Aisha felt the thrill of discovery and the promise of what was to come. The difficult piece she had played was not just a challenge. It was a glimpse into her own potential. And as she prepared for the next steps in her journey, she did so with the same quiet courage, ready to face whatever lay ahead with patience, grace, and the unwavering love of music. The day after Aisha's remarkable performance, the atmosphere at the academy was different. Whispers filled the hallways. Students who had once ignored her now looked at her with curiosity, some even with envy. Teachers discussed her skills quietly, unable to stop praising the girl they had underestimated. Aisha, however, remained the same modest student she had always been. She didn't walk with her head held high or boast about her talent. She simply continued her practice, focusing on the music rather than the attention it brought. The academy decided that such a gifted student needed further challenges, something that would test her abilities even more. Aisha was given an exceptionally difficult piece, known for its complex rhythms and emotional depth. While other students groaned at the thought, Aisha felt a quiet thrill. She wasn't thinking about praise or recognition. She was thinking about the music itself. The piece was challenging, yes, but it was also beautiful. She wanted to understand it fully and express it the way it was meant to be played. Her home practice sessions became even more intense. Every morning, she would arrive at the piano before sunrise, the first notes filling the quiet house. She analyzed every part of the piece, breaking it down measure by measure. She practiced slowly, correcting every tiny mistake, and then gradually increased the tempo. It wasn't just about playing the notes correctly. It was about feeling the music, understanding its mood and story, and letting it come alive through her fingers. Sometimes, frustration crept in. There were passages that seemed impossible, fingerings that didn't feel right, chords that refused to sound harmonious. But Aisha never gave up. She would pause, breathe deeply, and try again, reminding herself that patience and persistence were part of the journey. The piano had taught her discipline and resilience, lessons she carried into every aspect of her life. Her friends at the academy were a mix of admiration and confusion. Some of them couldn't understand why she worked so hard without seeking recognition. Others felt inspired, secretly watching her dedication and realizing that talent alone wasn't enough. It was the effort behind it that made someone truly exceptional. A few tried to talk to her, asking for advice or tips on how to practice, and she offered help gently, without making them feel inferior. The teachers, meanwhile, observed her closely. They began assigning her pieces that were usually reserved for advanced students, hoping to see how far she could go. They were curious but cautious, unsure if she would rise to the challenge or falter under pressure. Aisha, as always, approached each new piece with calm determination. She didn't care about impressing them. She cared about understanding the music and doing justice to it. One afternoon, the academy announced a small recital for selected students, meant to showcase their progress. Aisha was naturally included, though the announcement didn't highlight her as the star. Some students whispered that she would shine, but many expected her to perform as she had before, well but quietly. Aisha, as usual, didn't let the speculation bother her. She practiced the piece assigned for the recital with care, focusing on every note, every expression. The day of the recital arrived, and the room was filled with parents, students, and teachers. The atmosphere was light and cheerful, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity whenever Aisha walked to the piano. She sat down, placed her fingers on the keys, and took a deep breath. For a moment, there was silence, as if everyone was holding their breath in anticipation. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but they carried a depth of feeling that immediately drew the audience in. As she continued, her confidence grew. The complex passages that had troubled her at first were now flowing smoothly. Her fingers moved effortlessly, translating emotion into sound with a clarity that was mesmerizing. The audience, who had come expecting a polite performance, were captivated. Teachers who had doubted her abilities were now visibly impressed. They leaned forward, watching the girl they had once overlooked perform with skill and grace. Even the students who had mocked her quietly before were now silent, amazed by what they were witnessing. The music seemed to fill the room, creating a connection between the performer and every listener. It wasn't just a recital. It was a story, told through sound and emotion. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then, slowly, applause began to fill the room. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was admiration for someone who had truly poured her heart into her performance. Aisha smiled gently, a little embarrassed by the attention, but also quietly proud of the work she had put in. She had challenged herself, faced difficult pieces, and expressed her own understanding of the music. That was her real reward. After the recital, several teachers approached her, offering words of praise and encouragement. They acknowledged that they had underestimated her talent, and they now wanted to guide her further, provide opportunities, and see how far she could go. Aisha listened politely, grateful for their support, but she remained focused on her next practice session rather than dwelling on compliments. The experience taught her a valuable lesson. Recognition was temporary, but skill and dedication were lasting. She realized that her true satisfaction came not from applause but from the mastery of the music and the joy of expressing herself through the piano. Each note she played was a reflection of her efforts, her emotions, and her love for the art. In the weeks that followed, Aisha's reputation grew quietly. People began to notice her, not because she sought attention, but because her talent was impossible to ignore. Invitations to small performances and collaborations started to arrive. She accepted some, always with humility, and declined others, preferring to focus on learning and refining her skills. She understood that her journey was not about fame but about growth, and the ability to touch others through her music. Her classmates began to treat her differently, some with respect, others with curiosity. A few sought her guidance, hoping to learn from her disciplined practice habits. Aisha helped them patiently, never boasting about her abilities, always emphasizing the importance of dedication and love for the craft. She became a quiet inspiration, a reminder that talent alone is not enough, and that perseverance and humility can lead to extraordinary results. Through it all, Aisha remained grounded. She continued to practice early in the mornings, losing herself in the music as she always had. The piano remained her confidant and companion, a source of joy and discovery. Each day brought new challenges, new pieces to learn, and new opportunities to express herself. She welcomed them all with the same calm determination, never losing sight of why she played in the first place. Her journey was far from over. There would be more difficult pieces, more expectations, and more moments of doubt. But Aisha knew that as long as she remained true to herself and her music, she could face anything. The quiet girl who had once been overlooked was slowly emerging as a remarkable pianist, not through loud proclamations, but through her dedication, humility, and the undeniable power of her talent. And though the world was beginning to notice, she played each note as if no one were watching, letting the music speak for itself and showing the first signs of the extraordinary path that lay ahead. Aisha's life at the academy had changed in ways she never expected. Though she remained modest and quiet, whispers followed her wherever she went. Some students admired her dedication, while others struggled to hide their jealousy. The teachers, once doubtful, now watched her carefully, eager to see the next level of her abilities. She was given increasingly challenging pieces, each one demanding more technique, emotion, and precision than the last. One day, the academy organized a special workshop, inviting a renowned pianist to demonstrate advanced techniques and offer guidance. Many students were excited, hoping to impress the guest with their performances. Aisha felt the same mix of anticipation and nerves, but mostly she was curious. She wanted to learn from someone who had mastered the art she loved so deeply. She arrived early, quietly taking a seat in the corner, not drawing attention to herself. The guest pianist began to play, filling the room with music so powerful that it made Aisha's heart beat faster. She watched every movement, every subtle expression, and stored it in her mind. This was more than a performance. It was a lesson, an example of what was possible when talent and discipline meet. After the demonstration, students were invited to perform short pieces, one by one. Aisha's turn came last. She walked to the piano with her usual calm demeanor. The room had fallen silent, full of expectation. She sat down, took a deep breath, and began to play the complex piece she had been working on for weeks. At first, the notes were soft, almost tentative, but gradually her confidence grew. The music swelled and filled the room, each phrase carefully shaped and expressive. The guest pianist, who had played with such brilliance moments ago, paused to listen, a smile of surprise forming on his face. Aisha's fingers moved with precision and grace. She tackled the challenging passages effortlessly, her hands flowing over the keys like water. Every chord, every arpeggio, seemed natural, as if the piano itself responded to her touch. The other students stared in awe, many holding their breath, unable to comprehend how someone so quiet could play with such skill. Teachers whispered to one another, realizing that they had not fully grasped the extent of her talent. When the final note lingered in the air, the room was silent for a heartbeat. Then applause erupted, not just polite clapping but genuine admiration. Even the guest pianist was impressed, stepping forward to offer a few words of praise. He complimented her technique, her expression, and the maturity of her musical understanding. Aisha felt a warm sense of satisfaction but did not let it overwhelm her. She nodded politely, grateful, but her focus was already on what she could learn next. In the following days, Aisha's confidence grew. She realized that her talent could be recognized without losing her humility. She continued to challenge herself, exploring pieces that demanded even greater skill. Every day brought a new obstacle, a new passage to perfect, a new emotion to express. She spent hours analyzing compositions, understanding the composer's intent, and making it her own. It was hard work, but she loved every moment of it. Her classmates began to approach her more often, some seeking advice, others simply curious about her methods. Aisha welcomed their questions, explaining how she approached difficult passages, how she practiced patiently, and how she focused on understanding the music rather than rushing through it. She never boasted, never implied she was superior. Her guidance was gentle, encouraging others to discover their own potential rather than comparing themselves to her. The teachers, now fully aware of her capabilities, started preparing her for public performances outside the academy. They knew that Aisha had the skill and emotional depth to impress audiences, but they also understood that she needed time and support to adjust to performing in front of larger crowds. Aisha felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had played for teachers and small audiences, but performing publicly was different. The stakes were higher, the pressure more intense. Yet, she was determined to remain true to herself and her music. Weeks passed, and Aisha was invited to participate in a regional music competition. It was an opportunity that could open doors to scholarships, mentorships, and professional performances. She accepted quietly, not speaking much about it to others. Her preparation was meticulous. She practiced for hours every day, often staying late into the evening, refining every detail. She imagined the stage, the audience, the feeling of the piano under her fingers, and used that vision to guide her practice. On the day of the competition, Aisha arrived early to familiarize herself with the piano and the hall. The other participants were confident, some chatting loudly, others practicing on nearby instruments. Aisha remained calm, focusing on the music in her mind. When it was her turn, she walked to the piano, feeling the familiar weight of the keys under her fingers. The room fell silent as she began to play. Her performance was breathtaking. The notes flowed effortlessly, each phrase carrying emotion and meaning. The complex passages that had taken her weeks to perfect now seemed natural, almost effortless. Her fingers danced over the keys with precision, grace, and a quiet power that captivated everyone in the room. The judges exchanged impressed glances, and the audience was spellbound. Even the other competitors could not help but watch, amazed at the skill and expression she brought to the music. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, cheering not only for her technical skill but for the feeling she had conveyed through the music. Aisha bowed politely, a small smile on her face, grateful for the recognition but not overwhelmed by it. She had played to express herself, to share the music she loved, and that had been more important than any award or accolade. After the competition, several music mentors approached her, offering guidance, encouragement, and opportunities to perform in more prestigious venues. They saw in her not just talent but the dedication and humility that made her a true artist. Aisha listened, taking in their advice, but remained focused on her own journey. She knew that there would always be more to learn, more challenges to face, and more music to explore. Back at the academy, her peers treated her with a mixture of admiration and respect. Some were inspired, others intimidated, but all recognized that Aisha was exceptional. She continued to practice quietly, never seeking attention, never boasting, and always pushing herself to be better. Her journey was far from over, but she had taken another significant step forward. She had faced challenges, proven her abilities, and begun to understand the power of her own dedication and passion. Through it all, Aisha remained grounded. She understood that music was not about fame or applause, but about expression, growth, and connection. Every day, she approached the piano with the same calm determination, ready to face new challenges, learn new pieces, and continue her journey. She had discovered that her quiet nature and modesty were not weaknesses, but strengths. They allowed her to focus, to learn, and to express herself authentically. And though the world was beginning to notice her, she played each note as if no one were watching, letting the music speak for itself and showing the promise of the extraordinary path that lay ahead. After the regional competition, Aisha returned to the academy with a quiet sense of pride. She had performed exceptionally, and the judges' praise and standing ovation were still fresh in her mind. Yet, she did not let it change who she was. She remained humble, focused, and deeply committed to her music. The experience had given her confidence, but more importantly, it had shown her that her efforts and love for music could touch others. The Academy decided that Aisha was ready for more advanced opportunities. They arranged for her to perform in a larger city concert hall, an event attended by experienced musicians, critics, and enthusiasts. This was different from the Academy or regional competitions. The audience was not just students and teachers. It was a crowd that had high expectations and would not hesitate to critique. Aisha felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but mostly, she was determined to play with honesty and emotion. In the weeks leading up to the concert, she practiced tirelessly. Every morning she started with scales, finger exercises, and simple pieces to warm up. Then she moved on to the challenging compositions chosen for the performance. Each day, she focused on small improvements, ensuring that every note, every pause, every expression was intentional. She worked on technique, dynamics, and emotion, making sure the music reflected both the composer's intentions and her own understanding. Her teachers were amazed at her dedication. They provided guidance, offering suggestions to refine certain parts of the pieces, but it was clear that Aisha's own interpretation was strong and unique. She was learning not just how to play music, but how to communicate through it, to make an audience feel every emotion behind the notes. Her classmates watched with awe, some secretly wishing they had her discipline and patience. Finally, the day of the concert arrived. The hall was grand, filled with people whose lives revolved around music. Critics took their seats with notebooks ready, students and teachers from other academies whispered in excitement, and the stage lights cast a warm glow over the grand piano. Aisha felt the familiar weight of nerves but also a deep sense of readiness. She had practiced for this moment, and she trusted her own preparation. Walking onto the stage, she could feel the audience's eyes on her. She approached the piano, her movements calm and composed. Sitting down, she adjusted the bench slightly, placed her fingers on the keys, and took a deep, steadying breath. For a moment, everything else faded. The whispers, the lights, the expectations. There was only her and the piano. She began with soft, delicate notes, each one precise and filled with intention. The audience listened, spellbound, as her music unfolded. The difficult passages, which could intimidate even experienced performers, flowed effortlessly from her hands. She didn't rush. She allowed each phrase to breathe, each chord to resonate fully. The emotion in her playing was palpable, carrying the story of the music directly to the listeners' hearts. The critics leaned forward, taking notes, but even they could not hide the admiration in their eyes. This was not just technical skill. They had seen countless pianists, but few could combine precision, expression, and humility in such a compelling way. Aisha's performance was more than a recital. It was a connection, a conversation between her and everyone in the hall, communicated entirely through music. As she reached the climax of the piece, the audience was completely absorbed. The tension, the beauty, the intensity of the composition was conveyed flawlessly. Every note was intentional, every pause meaningful. The music carried the listeners through a journey, and they felt it deeply. Some closed their eyes, some held their breath, and all were silently acknowledging the talent before them. Aisha, immersed in the music, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She was not playing to impress. She was playing to express, to share, to connect. When the final note rang out and lingered in the hall, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then the applause erupted, filling the space with warmth and admiration. People stood, cheering, clapping, and some even wiping tears from their eyes. Aisha bowed gently, her smile modest but sincere. She felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond recognition. It was the joy of having communicated through her music, having shared a piece of herself with the world. After the concert, many approached her, critics, musicians, and music enthusiasts. They complimented her technical skill, her expression, and the depth of her understanding. They asked how she had achieved such control and emotion, how she prepared herself, and what inspired her approach. Aisha listened politely, answering humbly, emphasizing the importance of patience, discipline, and love for music. She never boasted about her abilities, never compared herself to others, but shared her journey in a way that inspired those around her. Back at the academy, news of her performance spread quickly. Students were impressed, teachers proud, and even those who had doubted her before were now convinced of her extraordinary talent. Invitations to perform at other events began to arrive, smaller concerts, collaborative projects, and educational workshops. Each opportunity was carefully considered, and Aisha accepted them with the same quiet determination she had always shown. She remained focused on her growth, her practice, and her connection with music rather than chasing fame. In her personal life, Aisha remained the same modest, dedicated girl. She continued to practice at home, exploring new pieces and techniques. She also began mentoring younger students, teaching them not just how to play the piano, but how to approach music with patience and emotional understanding. Her guidance was gentle, encouraging, and inspiring. She became a role model, not because she sought to be one, but because her dedication, humility, and talent naturally drew admiration. Through these experiences, Aisha learned important lessons. She understood that true talent is not about showing off or seeking recognition, but about dedication, practice, and the ability to express oneself authentically. She realized that humility and confidence could coexist, that one could be exceptional without arrogance. And she discovered the joy of connecting with others through music, of sharing her passion in a way that could inspire and move people. The concert was a turning point, a moment where Aisha's quiet talent became undeniable. It showed her that the world could appreciate her skills without diminishing her modesty. It also revealed the responsibility that comes with such talent, the responsibility to continue learning, sharing, and growing. Aisha embraced this responsibility, not as a burden, but as a path to fulfillment and purpose. As she returned to her daily practice, she did so with renewed energy and focus. Every note she played was a step forward, every piece a challenge to overcome, and every performance an opportunity to connect with others. She had faced public scrutiny, demanding pieces, and high expectations, yet she had remained true to herself and her music. And in doing so, she had proven that extraordinary talent, when combined with humility and dedication, could leave a lasting impact. Even in quiet moments alone with the piano, Aisha felt the thrill of discovery. She experimented with new techniques, explored complex compositions, and expressed emotions she had never put into music before. Each day was a journey, and she embraced it fully, knowing that her path as a pianist was just beginning. The concert hall had been a stage for her skill, but the piano itself, her constant companion, was where she truly shined, revealing the depth of her talent and the power of her dedication. After her unforgettable performance at the City Concert Hall, Aisha returned to the academy with a new sense of purpose. She felt the weight of expectations, both from herself and from those around her, but she welcomed it. She knew that talent alone would not carry her forward. Dedication, practice, and emotional understanding were just as important. She approached every day with renewed focus, determined to grow as both a pianist and a person. The teachers encouraged her to take on even more challenging opportunities. They arranged for her to perform in multiple venues, including charity events, collaborative concerts, and workshops for younger students. Each performance was a new challenge, but Aisha approached them all with the same calm determination. She did not perform for applause or recognition. She performed to share music, to connect with her audience, and to express the depth of her understanding. At home, her life remained simple. She continued to practice for hours, focusing on technique, expression, and interpretation. She explored compositions she had never attempted before, some extremely difficult, others emotionally complex. Her fingers moved across the keys with precision, but her playing was always filled with emotion and soul. She was learning not just how to play music, but how to make it speak, how to tell stories without words. The Academy noticed her growth and began introducing her to opportunities that extended beyond the local music scene. Invitations arrived from other cities, even other countries, offering chances to perform in prestigious events. Aisha was both excited and nervous. Traveling, performing in front of new audiences, and adapting to different pianos and halls were challenges she had not faced before. Yet, she accepted these opportunities with careful consideration, understanding that each one was a chance to grow. Before each new performance, she followed a strict routine. She arrived early, familiarized herself with the piano, warmed up her fingers, and ran through the pieces with care. She visualized the performance, imagining every note, every chord, and every expression. This preparation was not about perfection, but about confidence and understanding. She wanted to be fully present when she played, allowing the music to flow naturally. Her classmates continued to admire her, some asking for guidance, others inspired to work harder themselves. Aisha shared her knowledge with patience and humility. She taught them not just technical skills, but also how to approach music with dedication and emotion. She encouraged them to listen deeply, to practice carefully, and to never rush the learning process. Her influence was quiet but powerful, shaping the next generation of pianists at the academy. One day, a renowned music mentor visited the academy, seeking talented students to train and support. The mentor had heard of Aisha's performances and was curious to see her play. When Aisha sat at the piano and began, her skill and expression were immediately evident. The mentor watched with admiration, impressed by her technical ability, her emotional depth, and her humble demeanor. They offered her guidance, opportunities for advanced training, and introductions to professional music circles. Aisha accepted graciously, understanding that these opportunities were a chance to learn and grow, not a ticket to fame. Her life became a balance between practice, performances, and learning from new mentors. Each day was filled with challenges and discoveries. Sometimes, she struggled with difficult passages, or a performance did not go as smoothly as she hoped. In those moments, she reminded herself that growth came from effort, patience, and persistence. Mistakes were part of the journey, and each one taught her something valuable about music, herself, and the art of performance. In every performance, Aisha remained grounded. She played not to impress but to express, not to seek recognition but to connect. Audiences were consistently captivated by her ability to bring emotion, story, and depth to every piece. People who attended her concerts often spoke of how her music moved them, sometimes bringing tears or evoking deep reflection. Aisha listened to their reactions with humility, never letting praise overshadow her commitment to continuous learning. She also began collaborating with other musicians. These experiences challenged her to listen carefully, adapt, and complement other instruments while maintaining her own voice. Working with others taught her patience, communication, and the importance of harmony, both in music and in life. She discovered that music was not just a solo journey. It was a shared experience that could unite people and create meaningful connections. Her reputation as a pianist continued to grow quietly. Invitations to perform in international events arrived, along with opportunities to record her interpretations of classical and contemporary compositions. Aisha accepted these invitations selectively, choosing experiences that would help her grow rather than simply seeking exposure. She remained true to her values of humility, dedication, and the pursuit of excellence. Through all of this, she never lost sight of why she played. Music was not about recognition or awards. It was about expression, connection, and growth. Each day, she approached the piano with the same curiosity, patience, and love she had felt when she first touched the keys. She continued to push her limits, explore new pieces, and refine her skills, knowing that her journey as a pianist was lifelong. In quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come. From the modest student who had been overlooked by her teachers to the pianist now performing on grand stages, she had grown in skill, confidence, and understanding. Yet, she remained humble, knowing that every performance was a learning experience and every piece of music held new lessons. Her dedication and humility had become her strengths, allowing her to inspire others without seeking the spotlight. Aisha's journey was now about more than her own growth. She was becoming a mentor, a role model, and a source of inspiration for aspiring musicians. Her story showed that talent combined with patience, discipline, and humility could achieve remarkable results. She remained a quiet force, letting her music speak louder than words ever could, and demonstrating that true artistry is about heart, dedication, and authenticity. As she prepared for future performances and continued her studies, Aisha felt a deep sense of purpose. She was not driven by fame or accolades, but by the desire to understand music more deeply and share it with the world. Each note she played, each piece she learned, and each performance she gave was a step forward in her lifelong journey. She embraced every challenge, every opportunity, and every lesson with grace, knowing that her path as a pianist was only just beginning, and that the music she loved would continue to guide and inspire her for years to come. Aisha's journey had reached a point where her quiet dedication and humility had begun to shine on a much larger stage. Invitations to perform internationally had started to arrive, and her mentors encouraged her to embrace these opportunities. While the idea of traveling and performing in front of new audiences made her nervous, it also filled her with excitement. She knew that each performance would be a chance not just to showcase her skills, but to grow, to learn, and to touch the hearts of others with her music. Before leaving for her first international performance, Aisha spent weeks preparing. She studied each piece in depth, analyzing the emotions behind the notes and envisioning the story she wanted to tell. She practiced every day with meticulous care, focusing on technique, dynamics, and expression. She also rehearsed under pressure, imagining the lights, the audience, and the energy of a large concert hall. This preparation helped her build confidence, not for the applause, but for the assurance that she could convey the music's message authentically. The day of her departure arrived, and Aisha stepped into the airplane with a mixture of anticipation and calm focus. She thought about how far she had come, from a modest student overlooked by teachers to a pianist ready to perform on an international stage. She reminded herself that every note she played was a reflection of her love for music, her patience, and her dedication. She was ready to let the music speak for itself. Her first international venue was grand, filled with people who had high expectations. Critics, music enthusiasts, and fellow musicians filled the seats. The stage lights were bright, and the piano was polished and unfamiliar. Aisha approached it with her usual calm demeanor. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her fingers lightly on the keys. She took a deep breath, letting the quiet confidence she had built over years guide her. As she began to play, the music filled the hall with emotion and depth. The difficult passages flowed effortlessly, and her interpretation brought the story of each piece vividly to life. The audience was captivated, drawn into the journey she was creating with her fingers. Each note was deliberate, each pause intentional, and every chord carried meaning. It was more than a performance. It was a conversation between her and everyone listening, communicated purely through the music. The applause at the end was overwhelming, but Aisha remained humble. She bowed gently, grateful for the recognition but focused more on the fact that she had shared her music honestly. She realized that the true reward was not the applause, but the connection she had created with the audience. Her music had spoken where words could not, and that was the most fulfilling achievement of all. After the performance, mentors and fellow musicians approached her with compliments, invitations, and opportunities to collaborate. They praised her technical skill, her emotional depth, and her ability to interpret music with authenticity. Aisha listened with humility, absorbing the guidance and advice offered to her. She knew that each opportunity was a chance to continue learning, not a sign to rest on her achievements. Back at her hotel room, she reflected on her journey. From a quiet, modest student practicing alone at home to performing on international stages, she had grown immensely. Yet, she remained the same person she had always been, dedicated, humble, and deeply in love with music. She thought about her teachers who had once underestimated her, her classmates who had watched in awe, and the countless hours of practice that had brought her to this moment. She realized that the journey itself, the effort, the persistence, and the emotional growth, was just as important as the achievements. In the weeks that followed, Aisha performed in multiple cities, each performance a new challenge and a new opportunity. She adapted to different pianos, acoustics, and audiences, always focusing on delivering music that was expressive, authentic, and heartfelt. Each performance added to her experience, helping her grow as a musician and as a person. She learned the importance of resilience, patience, and flexibility, understanding that even small mistakes could teach valuable lessons. During this time, she also continued to mentor younger students. She shared not only her technical knowledge but also the mindset required to pursue music with dedication and humility. She encouraged them to practice carefully, to feel the music deeply, and to remain patient with themselves. Her guidance inspired many, and she quietly became a source of support and motivation for aspiring musicians around her. Aisha's journey began to attract attention from music academies, organizations, and audiences worldwide. Yet, she never let recognition define her. She understood that true artistry was not about fame, but about dedication, expression, and the ability to move others through music. Each day, she approached the piano with the same curiosity and love that had driven her since childhood. She explored new pieces, experimented with interpretation, and challenged herself to grow constantly. Through all her travels and performances, Aisha remained grounded. She never forgot the small practice rooms where she had spent countless hours, the supportive but practical family who encouraged her, and the quiet determination that had fueled her early growth. These memories reminded her to stay humble and to value every step of the journey, no matter how big or small. Eventually, Aisha began to realize that her story could inspire others beyond music. Her dedication, humility, and quiet perseverance became a model for anyone striving to achieve excellence in any field. She was living proof that talent, when combined with patience, discipline, and authenticity, could achieve remarkable results without losing humility. Her life showed that success was not just about recognition, but about growth, connection, and the impact one could have on others. In her quiet moments, she reflected on the lessons music had taught her. Every piece was a teacher, every performance an opportunity to express herself, and every challenge a chance to grow. She embraced each experience with gratitude, knowing that the journey itself was a gift. Her love for music remained her guiding force, and her dedication ensured that she would continue to evolve, both as a pianist and as a human being. The journey that had begun with a modest girl playing alone in her living room had transformed into a life filled with connection, growth, and expression. Aisha had become a pianist whose music moved hearts, inspired peers, and touched audiences worldwide. Yet she remained humble, always seeking to learn, always striving to improve, and always dedicated to the love of music. She had learned that true success was measured not by applause or recognition, but by the depth of one's dedication, the authenticity of one's expression, and the ability to inspire and connect with others through one's craft. And so, Aisha continued her journey, playing each note with care, dedication, and love, letting the music speak for her, and quietly shaping a path that would inspire countless others to follow their own dreams with humility, patience, and passion.